All right, welcome back to Mind and Magic. Today I want to talk about consecration and deconsecration. This ties in a little with the video on magic maintenance, where we discussed having to recharge your magic occasionally when things start to wear off. But what happens when the magic doesn't wear off when you want it to? Let's get into it. All right, consecration. Why do we consecrate our magical items and implements and even our temple itself, our sacred space in which we perform magic? There are a couple reasons for this, and the first of which is to separate the sacred from the profane. Now, I've done a video on the sacred and the profane before, and I'll leave a link to that video up in the corner here. But essentially what you're doing is you are declaring that this item or space is intended for magical purposes only, and you are not going to use it for any other mundane purpose. Once your items and space have been cleansed and consecrated, they are suitable for ritual work. They have been made sacred. That's the first reason for consecration. And the second reason, it kind of ties in with the first reason. Now that your item is sacred, you can now store it with other items that are sacred in your space that has been made sacred. You want to keep all of your sacred belongings together away from the profane. And this is because of permeation and acclimation. This is something that we cover in the Laws of Magic series. The premise of which is that things absorb the energy of its surroundings. You don't want any of your profane energy getting on your sacred items, and so you keep them separate. Now, this permeation and acclimation just doesn't involve your things and your sacred space. It also involves you. We also absorb the energy of our surroundings, and that's why it is important to clear your energy periodically. That goes double for anyone with a strong Pisces placement, Sun, Moon, or Ascendant in Pisces, because that sign really acts like a sponge and soaks up all the surrounding energy. A lot of psychics have Piscean placements. That's why they can get a read on things, because they're absorbing the energy. That's how they get a read on it. But permeation and acclimation is important. You've heard of birds of a feather flock together, right? And you may have heard that you're the sum of the 5 people you hang around the most, because what you hang around, you eventually become. Now, I just watched a video with a hypnotist, and he was talking about how if you're too lucky in the casinos and you're winning a lot, the casinos will actually send unlucky people they call coolers to go hang out near you. So you absorb their bad luck and start losing. Now, that's not anything I can verify, but I wouldn't doubt it because it does line up with this law of magic of permeation and acclimation. And this is important to realize in magic because if you're invoking a bunch of dark entities and spirits without the traditional safeguards, they will leave an energetic imprint on your ritual space and on you. And over time, it will affect you and begin to shift you to becoming darker and darker. Now, in that particular Laws of Magic lesson, I believe I talked about one magician who did just that. Kept evoking Goetic spirits and dark entities associated with the left hand without any traditional safeguards. And over time, as their energetic imprint permeated him and he acclimated to it, he himself became darker and darker, and so did his space, his entire home. Because he talked about how people would come over and they wouldn't want to stay very long because the entire house became dark to where sunlight couldn't even penetrate the open windows. And it's my belief that this is what caused a lot of problems in his life. It's said that a magician is a conductor of energy. You get to direct it. That's what you're doing. And in order to do that, you really need to learn how energy works and behaves. And the first step to that is realizing that everything is energy. Everything is made up of atoms and molecules, and they just group together to form physical structures. So knowing that everything is energy, and that energy absorbs other energy, you can see why you don't want to keep your ritual items that have been consecrated and charged around your everyday mundane items. And if you don't have that ability, then you at least need to keep it wrapped up in either black cloth or preferably silk if it is small enough. Sometimes it's hard to find larger silk cloths for this purpose. For example, all of my really important tools, such as my Golden Dawn elemental weapons, are wrapped in silk when they're not in use, just to keep other energies off of them. Even though my sacred space, my little basement temple, is consecrated and everything in it is consecrated, I will still wrap certain tools. And some of my other items, such as the Solomon Pinnacles, Black Pullet talismans and rings, and Goetic sigil medallions, aren't just kept behind the black curtains in my temple to hide them away from whoever may stumble upon them. No, it's also to help keep other energy off of them. So now that you understand this principle, you may want to treat your magical items and implements with a bit more care. If you're going to make something sacred, you need to treat it as such. Now, sometimes things can't be helped. For example, when I had to do renovations on my temple, my sacred space, tearing it all out, redoing drywall, painting, etc., with no other place to really put all of my stuff, that is when you'll probably have to reconsecrate anything you believe may have been energetically mixed. No, it may end up being the entire temple and everything you have in it that needs to be reconsecrated if it's a major renovation. And that can take a while. Depending how far along you are on your path, one consecration ceremony is probably not going to cut it. I mean, think of it, just in Solomon Pinnacles alone. That's a consecration ritual for every day of the week for all the planetary seals. And you're going to keep those separate from the other consecrations, and it can just get to be a lot to redo. And this is why you don't let anybody touch your magical tools and your magical items, or even allow them into your sacred space, if you can help it, because I don't want to have to reconsecrate them. You don't want their energy leaching into your items or vice versa. You don't want your charged magical implements being siphoned off by them. And this is especially true if they're uninitiated or don't have a magical practice of their own, because you don't want the sacred mixing with the profane. You don't want to have to redo everything if you don't have to. Next, we need to get into deconsecration. All right, so deconsecration. What are some reasons why we might want to deconsecrate something? To strip away its sacredness, to return it to everyday mundane use. Well, that's the main reason right there. Perhaps you no longer want the item, or it got damaged, or you're looking to sell it. You'll want to deconsecrate that item first. A lot of the so-called haunted items, I've mentioned the old show, The Haunted Collector, many times. It was one of the better paranormal shows because they always ended up tracing the alleged haunting back to an item that was charged. Yeah, they were never deconsecrated. And then they mixed them in with other profane items around them, and then things would start acting up because you're essentially throwing two polarities together. It's like when you mix a warm and a cold front together in weather, you get a storm. Anytime two extreme polarities clash together, it is in a violent manner. You get trouble. And that's what a lot of these so-called haunted items are. Now, this could be done purposefully or it could be done accidentally. Say a practitioner suddenly passes away and all their stuff gets handed down or sold off. Now, that could be a lot of charged items going out there that can now cause a lot of paranormal problems. Without a magician to conduct its energy, that charged energy can sometimes have a mind of its own because it doesn't like being trapped. All energy must return to source. And when you trap energy like that can't escape, it could sometimes lash out. Similar to that arcing effect that we went over in the middle pillar ritual video. Same goes for ritual spaces. Like if you don't deconsecrate your sacred space, your temple room, and the house gets sold, and other people move in and use that room, there could be a lot of problems. You know, in those old paranormal shows, you would see like, oh, this place is haunted. This is where they did rituals. Yeah, that could be. So do your best not to leave things to become problems for other people who come behind you. Whether you're moving, selling, or just getting rid of something, deconsecrate it first before you do, maybe saving others down the road from having a huge headache on their hands. And this is just part of having a professional and responsible practice. The knowledge on these things with the general masses is pretty thin, so do not expect them to solve it. They'll be bringing in ghost hunters and priests and exorcists when you could have saved them all that with just a 20-minute deconsecration. Again, I know that sometimes it cannot be helped, such as in the case of a tragedy where somebody passes suddenly and everything's left behind, but in the cases where it can be helped, you do want to practice responsibly and deconsecrate anything that may fall into the hands of others. And that is about all the time we have for today. I want to thank you for listening. Consider joining us on Patreon. We got a good thing going over there. There's early access and exclusive content, with more being added all the time. And check out my website, mindandmagick.com, for programs and more. I'm going to be starting some unadvertised sales in addition to the deal of the month fairly soon, so you'll want to pop in from time to time for those. And I'll see you soon. Take care.